Welcome everybody to another Monday. Wednesday. We're so excited to have you here for our product spotlight. I am losing track of my weeks. The construction sector is quite possibly the oldest and most fragmented industry that exists, lacking innovation and desperate for new blood as the old guard ages out. How can we drive change in the built environment for the present and the future? Is there a magic formula? Is there some secret sauce? Today, we are going to welcome Daniel Leech, CEO for the Technical Design Services Group, who thinks we can build it better in 3 easy steps. So who is Daniel Leech? Well, overseeing a team of technical experts delivering design and structural engineering services for structural steelwork, architectural metalwork, and light gauge steel framing on some of the most significant buildings in the London skyline, with an expanding portfolio on global scale. The Technical Design Services Group consists of 3 organizations: TDS, Design for Structures, and the Construction and Design Center of Excellence, providing innovative engineering design, detailing, and training solutions to the construction industry. But hold on, first, we need to thank our sponsors for helping us advance construction and for all of us to help build it better. So a big shout out to Forward Solutions Group for allowing us to deliver these examples of construction innovation. Forward Solutions Group is successfully driving companies to succeed where others have failed. Also, you want to check out their new manufacturing ERP software, Moducore. If you haven't seen it, I'd go look at it right now because it is making big waves throughout the industry. Contact Ben Hershey to learn more at ben@forwardsolutionsgroup.com. And also a big shout out to Howick Ltd. Howick has a long history of innovation in cold form steel manufacturing and produces innovative precision roll forming technology for customers throughout the U.S. and the world. Check out their Machine Buyer's Guide for offsite modular construction or fast build construction with light steel for framing. Learn more at howickltd.com. All right, let's hop into it without further ado, and let's bring Dan into the conversation. Dan, how are you, my friend?
Very well, Dave. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, listen, I know it's a well, in your world it's a football night. In our world we call it a soccer night. All right, you got a big game coming up, or a couple big games, so we're not going to keep you too long today, Dan. So why don't we just hop right into it? Let's learn a little bit about who you are. In fact, we want to know everything about you from the moment you were born to this very moment in time. Do not leave out any of the good stuff from the hospital, or we will call your mother. And she will come on this show, and I already know, based on talking to you, that she will embarrass the daylights out of you. But you only got 2 minutes to do it, so go ahead.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, so I'm Dan Leech, the CEO of the Technical Design Services Group. And yeah, I grew up, I would have been 4th generation market trader. My family were on the local market for 70 years. So spent most of my school years in between school and working on the pet food store, selling bird seed and dog food and various other things that you can supply for your pets. And then transitioned into selling jeans for my uncle. So started folding shirts and jeans and shoes and belts and all those other good things, and had lots of great fun, met loads of great people, and yeah, just had a sort of a work ethic instilled in me from an early age, from both my mother and my grandparents, really. So then went off to university and studied and qualified with a degree in business and finance, and started out my initial career working for a FTSE 100 recruitment business on a graduate scheme, and then joined TDS in 2001 as a commercial manager. And over the course of probably 5 or 6 years, 3 of the founding directors, for one reason or another, retired, and myself and my current business partner James bought the business in 2012, and we've been growing it and taking it in a different direction ever since. So yeah, that's pretty much my 2 minute talk.
It was perfect. So, all right. So, TDS, Design for Structures, and the Construction and Design Center of Excellence, right? I think in that order, TDS was the original company. And then did you guys add Design for Structures and then the Construction and Design Center of Excellence to that?
Yeah, TDS was established in '92.
Okay.
We're what you would deem a traditional subcontract drawing office. So
Right.
we were originally working on drawing boards. We transitioned into 2D CAD in the late '90s, early 2000s, and then obviously we moved over to 3D modeling and BIM towards sort of 2008, 2009. Um, we set up CADCO and our academy in 2011, primarily because we were frustrated at what the sort of colleges and universities were offering us as an employer.
Yeah.
So we took it upon ourselves to create a qualification and a model of training that was going to benefit us as a business. And that was very much with the view to creating a pool of talent that we could bring through our own company. That then developed into lots of employers across the country that wanted a similar level of service and training. So that's why that grew into what it is these days. And in 6 years ago, in June, we set up Design for Structures, and again. The main purpose for that, really, we believe that when the UK government brought in their sort of BIM guidelines in 2010, 2011, that was going to sort of transform the business and elevate us up, working far earlier in the design process. But for lots of different reasons, it never really happened. And what we found was, although main contractors and clients were interested in what we did, the attitude was still very much that we don't pay your fees. The fabricators novated to take that risk, and we're going to leave it there. So we decided, if you can't beat them, join them. So the plan and the idea and the concept was to create a structural engineering consultancy that can provide everything that a structural engineer would normally provide, but with the added bonus of popping the detailing services on the back end. So Design for Structures really became almost a Trojan horse for the TDS team. So, to try and capture what we're doing now in its simplest form, we're a structural engineer that can detail. I think that's the easiest way that we can explain what we're trying to bring to the market.
So a structural engineering firm that can detail. I love that. I love that saying. So, but I also want to talk about detailing and training solutions to the construction industry. So you started this for your own benefit originally, and now that has actually grown for the benefit of the industry as a whole, from what I'm hearing you say. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah. So we're 10 years in as a business, and so far we've trained and introduced over 500 young people into the industry. I think with the education sector, particularly in the UK, I've got a lot of sympathy now we're in it for the colleges and universities and schools. I think ultimately the construction industry, just talking about the industry that we're in, I think it evolves at such a speed. It's very difficult sometimes for us to keep up with that evolution and know that we're up to speed with the latest technology or the latest regulations or whatever it might be. So it's nigh on impossible for schools and colleges and universities to develop curriculums that are aligned to what we need as an industry. So I very much believe that what we've done at CADCO is a model that could be replicated in any industry, cross-sector, cross-discipline. Because what we've ultimately done is retrained one of our engineers and qualified him to be able to teach, and we've created a curriculum and a delivery model that suits our industry. So for us, we were very much interested in developing young people and training young people, but the challenge that we had as a business was that when we recruited apprentices, we sent them to college and they got underpinning knowledge, but in a lot of areas that didn't actually affect us as a business. And it was very much down to us to deliver the vocational skills that they need, so actually show them how to do the job. The way that CADCO works, we've sort of flipped that model on its head. So the kids that come into our cohorts, they actually come to us for 10 weeks of intensive training. We do have a classroom environment. That's changed a little bit through COVID because we do deliver a lot more of the training remotely. But the idea is they come into a classroom environment which replicates really the work environment. So we set it up very much to look like a structural engineering office or an architect's office. And what they get in those 10 weeks is 10 weeks of absolute commitment from someone that does the job every day. And we teach them everything from the basic fundamentals of 2D drawings, how to read and interpret drawings, and how to create GAs, plans, elevations. and all those 2D drawing skills that they need prior to introducing them to the, let's say, the rock and roll stuff that intrigues them, which is the 3D modeling and the BIM side. So the idea is at the end of the 10 weeks, Dave, is that we've accelerated their apprenticeship, we believe, by about 18 months in that 10-week slot. So instead of an apprenticeship taking 3 years to deliver, we can deliver it within 18 months to 24 months. And the big thing for the industry is we're giving those young people the skills to actually go straight into their design teams and start to work on live projects and start to make an impact straight away.
Right. I mean, that's to any manufacturing or design firm working on, DFMA or any of this stuff. What I think's so cool about this, and what you were talking, I'm like, I need a sound effect that's like the baseball home run hit, right? Boom. The crowd goes nuts because, there's very few programs or educational resources out there that are being taught by the people that actually have to do it every single day and lessons learned, right? That means you're up to date, you're up to speed on what's going on out there, which is huge because most universities are 5 years behind what they're teaching in a lot of instances.
100%. And I think the other big point there, Dave, as well, and it's a really honest and simple point, which is the salary to do the job is considerably higher than the salary to teach the job. And that's a real problem that the education sector's got. Teaching might be limited in our industry to, say, I don't know, £30,000 a year to teach, whereas people can earn £50,000 to £60,000 a year doing the job. So how do we attract the best people to teach and inspire our younger generation if the salary for doing the job is significantly higher than the salary for teaching the job? So you get stuck in this rut where the people that are in the classrooms become these guys that are semi-retired and at the tail end of their careers because they're not necessarily that focused on money or income. And, and that's really not where we want to be. We want to get inspirational people in the classrooms, bringing these kids through and giving them, a bit of excitement and a bit of, something a little bit different.
Yeah, for sure. Listen, everybody, if you're just joining us, we are live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter, so get your tweets on. And if you're not following Dan Leech and his team, you're wrong. Get out there and follow him, but not until after the show. And make sure you also subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are growing every day and having a lot of fun doing it. Well, we're talking about how do we bring the youth back into labor shortages, what's happening with skill shortages, all of these things. But that's not all we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how Dan and his teams of these companies have taken it to a different level on their process and how much of the project they're going to own. So let's hop into this a little bit, Dan, because you kind of hit on it a little bit earlier about owning the project, not only from the design services, but all the way through almost the deliverable to the end user in your process. So let's talk about this. So one is that's hard to do, right? Without a system. It's really hard to do with the lack of skilled labor to help you process all of that and manage all of that. So why don't we talk about everything that's going on there, because there's that perceived culture in our industry, that perceived outlook on how we're doing it. But you guys said, you know what, I'm done with the old way. We're going to implement a couple new processes, 3 as a matter of fact. Why don't you walk us through how this whole thing goes?
Yeah, sure. I mean, to be honest with you, it came from, I would say, probably a frustration for the people that do the job. There is a very toxic culture within the construction industry at the moment. It's not a particularly nice place to be. There is a lot of posturing and a lot of good talk about all of the things that we should be doing around collaboration and innovation. We've been talking about BIM for 10 years, and the conferences and shows and seminars and exhibitions are the same. It's pumping out the same stuff, looking at models and fly-throughs and stuff that, it looks great, it looks quirky. But the reality is, on the front line, in the day-to-day, we haven't moved this forward at anything like the right pace. And what we're still experiencing and finding is that people are reluctant to share information. The models that exist, we get IFCs from engineers and architects that we're told we can't use, which is complete nonsense, So we end up remodeling and redetailing things again and regurgitating the same information. And it's got to a point really where, we effectively have clients that appoint architects and engineers to do a design or a scheme design or a concept design. That gets done to probably 40, 50, 60% of the level of detail for a variety of different reasons. That's not the architect and engineer's fault necessarily. And that information is then used to go out and appoint a main contractor to build and construct the project. So the main contractor that gets their price the most wrong wins the project.
Right.
And then once they've won the project, they use that same incomplete information, send that down their supply chains, and all of their supply chain partners that get their price the most wrong also win the job. And then we all go about and try and build these things and design these things, and we end up just kicking 10 bells out of each other. And the incredibly frustrating thing is, every legacy project that you see in the UK, it leaves a trail of destruction behind it. It leaves businesses that fail. It leaves companies with that bankrupts, and it really is toxic. And I think I said to you a few weeks ago when we talked initially, when we won the Hong Kong project, and probably 3 years ago now, the first thing we did as a business was sit down and say, "Oh my God, this, let's not let this be the project that takes us down." And I look back at that now and find it incredible that rather than celebrating a big project award and being exciting about what might be coming, the first thought that we had was about failure and about how we limit the chance of failure happening. And, for me, for collaboration and innovation to happen within the construction industry, we've fundamentally got to go away from the culture that we've got of blame and excuses and put finger pointing and liquidated damages and, companies that incentivize their QSs to take money off their supply chain partners. All these things are things that we just shouldn't be doing as an industry. We shouldn't be accepting. Unfortunately, those are the things that are absolutely rife within our industry. And I think until that changes, we're going to really struggle to bring the innovation and collaboration forward.
I'm smiling so much because it's right in our face every day. People want change. People want, the younger people to come into the industry. But like you're talking about, the beating up on, I'll put it in simpler terms, the beating up on your supply partners to drop your price and to get lower bids, lowest bid wins or middle, bid wins. And then, then we're going to hit the consumer, the end user with all these change orders because we have to make up all that money because everything was a mess, and it's cyclical and it happens over and over and over again. And what I'm liking, Dan, from what you guys are doing at your design group is you guys said enough of that. We're not doing that anymore. We're, this Hong Kong project, it's a huge project, by the way, so I want you to tell people what that project was. But what you're saying is not only are we going to design it, but we're going to own it through DFMA, Design for Manufacturing Assembly, and we're going to own it through the delivery of the job on the site. Walk us through this. Because you kind of bundled all of this together to make it a no-brainer for somebody to want to work with you. So there's no hidden headaches because you're taking
absolutely.
Headaches.
Yeah, within the UK market, the way that projects are procured, it's fairly standard. So typically speaking, the architect and engineer would take the scheme design through to, say, stage 3, REBA stage 3. And at that point, the stage 4 and stage 5 deliverables are novated to the manufacturing supply chain. And that's where things start to go, in my opinion, wrong, because they're brought onto the project too late. They haven't had an input to the stage 3 design. So there's been no manufacturing and installation thought process gone into the stage 3 design. And I think it's something that, from our perspective, has got to change, because the pressure that comes down at stage 4 to turn around all of the design information, check what the architect and engineer have produced, develop the design so that it does work with manufacturing and installation in mind, and do all of that within a really incredibly challenging program where things like liquidated damages linger in the background. And if we get something wrong, back charges and contra charges from the fabricator, for scrap material or wasted site labor and all those nasty, horrible things. So for us, what we've done is we've basically said to our clients now, rather than do that, bring us in at stage 0 at the very start. And what we'll do is we will take your project, we will do all of the infrastructure design, underground drainage and civil engineering. We'll take responsibility for the foundation design, the substructure, the superstructure, but we'll also take that then through and do all of the construction engineering, steel to steel connections, concrete to steel connections, manufacture level detailing and modeling, and actually create all of the fabrication and NC data files that the steelwork fabricator or the light gauge steel manufacturer needs to actually procure the material, manufacture it, and go and install it. And it's really ironic that with Hong Kong, I mean, we would have liked to have, let's say, launched this way of working on a much smaller scheme, on a much smaller level. But the Hong Kong International Airport Authority, I've got massive respect for what they did and how they did it, because the interesting thing was on Hong Kong was that we didn't work for the fabricator. We didn't work for the main contractor. We worked for the client. We worked for the airport authority direct. And what they actually did was they said to us, come on board and work with our tier one architect and our tier one engineer. And what we want you to do is actually challenge their design from a manufacturing perspective. So all of a sudden, we instead of being the humble steelwork draftsman at the very bottom of the supply chain, we actually became level with the two tier one architects, ADAS and ACON. And we were brought on as a specialist contractor to come in and develop the design. And where I've got massive respect for Hong Kong is that what they did was they removed all of those nasty clauses. They didn't want us to be overinsured and indemnified for all these, things that could go wrong, because what they believed intrinsically and fundamentally was that doing this the way that we did was going to completely limit the chances of stuff going wrong and things, not working out on site and all those good things. So we were given a contract with the airport authority to create an LOD 400 model. And what we did was provide all of the steel to steel and concrete to steel connection design as a structural engineering team. And then we also created a model and took it all the way through to a manufacturing level of detail. So that was fully coordinated, fully checked. I think where we found some real leaps forward with regards to innovation and collaboration is that because there was no fabricator involved and because there was no requirement for steelwork for 2 or 3 years, there was no program that was restricting everybody trying new stuff. So we were able to develop parametric modeling techniques. We were able to write script and code and really dig into the background of the software and technology that we were using. Within the UK market currently, when we're working for a fabricator or a manufacturer or a main contractor, if we trial new kit and we trial innovation and we trial new bits of script and code and all those good things, if that goes wrong and we miss a fabrication slot, we get absolutely hammered financially. We could be talking tens, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds. So there isn't an environment to actually collaborate in that environment. The actual focus is how do we get this job done as quickly as we possibly can, not how do we get this job done to the best level of detail and with the client's interests at heart. So on Hong Kong, the fantastic thing about that was that we were able to trial new technology and we brought things in that knocked weeks and months off of the program, but only because the client had the foresight to remove all of those horrible contractual clauses and that environment where if we get something wrong, we're going to pick up the tab and you're going to pay the bill. It became an environment where if we've got a problem, we highlight it, we talk about it as an overarching design team, we find a solution and we move the project forward. And it was like a breath of fresh air, really was.
What was that project? Can you tell what's the background?
Yeah, it was Hong Kong Terminal 2. So there's a new passenger terminal currently being constructed. We did the Terminal 2 roof structures on the GTC building in the main Terminal 2 roof. So it was over 10,000 tons of steel, big project. And yeah, just delighted really to be awarded such a prestigious project. And as I say, there was look, it wasn't without its challenges, and there was issues, and the job probably rolled on about 40-50% longer than it should have done, but for lots of different reasons. But the amount of stuff that we learned from that project, and I think the things that we can carry through onto future projects, was invaluable, and I think it worked very, very well. The airport authority actually emailed us about 3 months ago and said that the steelwork is all going in, nut, bolt and washer, picture perfect, very few contractor quibbles and queries, no EWOs, no extra work orders, no design creep, and they've got fixed project costs from the fabricators because they've quoted to finite information. It's dream ticket. It's a proper exemplar.
So how do you take any other projects on if they don't work like that, Dan? Does it drive you absolutely nuts now if like all your projects aren't going that way?
It doesn't. It does. I mean, it drives my team nuts. I mean, genuinely, I think my concern and my I guess the risk to our business is that our staff are going to burn out. And I think the pandemic has brought a completely new set of challenges, because I think people have started to realise, because of the slowdown during the pandemic, there's a lot more focus now on work-life balance.
Yep.
And I think people are doing the job now and going, is it worth it? Is it worth working till 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, being scared to death that if I make a mistake, there's going to be financial consequences to our business? And so for us, what we've been trying to do and what we've been communicating to our teams is that we're going to try and find this new construction industry that we know will exist in the future, but find the small pockets that are starting to develop and find those people. So for us now, probably 50% of our business is still in the old traditional construction industry. It's worse than it's ever been. The information is terrible. The programs are tight. The prices and fees are going down. But the glimmer of hope that we've had and we remain having is that we've got enough clients now that are coming through with projects that are understanding what they're buying from us, and they're understanding the value that we can generate. And again, that's moving on to another project that we delivered over the last probably I think we finished it about 12 months ago now, for Waits down in Piccadilly Circus. So the building that you've all seen in London with the big screens in Piccadilly, we've just developed a roof structure on the back of that building, which again, we've developed it all with offsite manufacturing in mind. And again, we've knocked, we believe, about 18 weeks off the program, and the main contractor has been absolutely delighted with the service that we've provided them. So what we're trying to do now, we feel like the concept and the idea that we've got is slightly ahead of the curve, and what we now need is more contractors and clients to come forward and talk to us and listen to what we're saying, and really try and understand what it is that we're actually bringing to the table, because I think that's where the confusion lies. There's still that kind of sell it to the fabricator. If it works, we'll pay them, and if it doesn't work, we won't. And I think that's the mentality that we're trying to avoid.
Henry, I'm going to just put this up again. Henry Mickelberg said it right. He's obviously biased, but the great thing about Dan's team is that they just take all of the disparate parts and sort them out for you. So for people that are out there, whether you're a developer, a manufacturer, or whatever the case is, to put this in layman's term, I can hire Dan's team, and Dan's team is going to do the design work. They're going to design for manufacturing. They're going to make sure the manufacturing process goes smoothly, and their design works with how that manufacturing process goes all the way through the delivery of this. Nobody does that I know of. And I think this is a big deal. I'm surprised. I'm surprised you even have time to be on my show.
Yeah, it's a strange thing. I mean, you mentioned at the front of the show, really, structural steelwork, architectural metalwork, and light gauge steel. Those are the three main markets from a detailing perspective that we've developed the business in. But even just in those three areas, because the construction industry has become so risk averse, you get situations where the structural steelwork guys will ignore the staircases, the balconies, the balustrading, the facade, the MEP, because they're not in their package of work. They're not their responsibility. So there's this attitude of not my problem, let someone else sort it out. For us, if we come on as the structural engineer, we'll fully coordinate all of those items, and so instead of the staircase guys having to come in and retrospectively design stairs around the steelwork that's been designed by another contractor not on another package of works, we'll take all of those things in. And people constantly ask me, well, aren't you taking a load more risk? And it's kind of like, yeah, we are taking a load more risk, but we're doing it in an environment where we're de-risking the whole project for everybody. Because if we design the staircases at the end of the job 6 weeks before it's required on site, there's a greater chance that we're going to miss something and something's going to be wrong, and we're going to pay the consequences of that. If we're working on that scheme 12 months earlier and we can design that staircase and coordinate the design of that staircase, it completely de-risks the project for everybody. And I think that's we've become so risk averse in the construction industry in the UK that we're actually creating an even riskier environment to work in, and that's the irony. And I think it's for me, it's kind of like time to stop talking about it, because we've been trying to do this for 6 years now with limited success. And I feel very frustrated scrolling through LinkedIn and seeing the same, I'm going to call it out, bullshit posts about we're doing this and we're doing that. It's actually time now to, instead of going to a BIM seminar and then going back to the office and carrying on doing what you were doing yesterday and firing out those emails, and it's time to actually start working with people that have got like-minded interests, like-minded goals and characteristics. And we've got some fantastic clients now that we work with that really buy into what we're doing, treat us very, very fairly. We work far more open book with those companies.
Right.
We win together and we lose together. And I think that for me is the future that I want to be part of, not one where, everyone's trying to kill everybody else.
Yeah, no, for sure. All right. So listen, if you're out there and you're listening to this, let's start calling out the bullshit posts, as Dan calls it. I love it. We're going to start a movement. I know Henry will be on board, because he's really, he loves to poke the bear, when it needs to be poked as well. So Henry, good to see you, my friend. I'm glad you're out there. So I have a LinkedIn user. I don't have the name here. How can we take the model and convince developers, owners, and architects that is the best solution? Fabricators get invited to projects way too late.
Yeah, this all comes down to a client that just gets it, that understands it. I guess the best way that I can put it to you is, if you were building something yourself, Dave, if you were building a conservatory on the back of your home and you said, I've got a budget of £25,000, would you be prepared to just give that project to any builder that says we can deliver that for £25,000?
Right.
Or would you be interested in understanding what materials they're using, how sustainable their work is, whether they're using professional contractors and all those good things? So this comes for me around the client, i.e. the end user, actually taking a vested interest in terms of how this project is going to be delivered. And the best example I can give you with this is the term value engineering. We hear it all the time. We want you to value engineer on our project. And what that typically means 95% of the time in the UK is make it cheaper. Now I ask you, is that creating value? For me, it isn't. Everybody can make something cheaper. That isn't generating value. Value engineering for me is designing a project and a scheme so that the end user gets a better product at the end of that. Now, there may be different reasons and there may be different things that they want to achieve. So you might have a client that just wants a project done as quickly as possible because they want rental income from it, or they're using it to produce or manufacture something that's really, important to their business. Or it might be a football stadium or an airport where it's got to function absolutely correctly. So if you're building an airport or a stadium that's going to be owned, operated and managed for the next 50 or 60 years, you want everything to be picture perfect. And unfortunately, at the moment, the way that we all get picked to work on these projects is if we're the cheapest price. Yeah. And that, to me, isn't value engineering and generating value for the end client. So I really think for Jason's question, in order to convince the clients, they've got to really try and start understanding the way that we're working as an industry, and not just wash their hands of it and think, well, I've got a budget, I've got a building or main contractor that's willing to do it, and I'm just going to ignore that fact and hope in 12 months time, 18 months time that my project is complete and to an acceptable, level of quality.
Sure. So this is Jason Blenker. Hey, Jason, sorry, your name doesn't pop up. It's a setting on your LinkedIn side. That's who wrote that. All right, listen, everybody, if you like what Dan is preaching today, and he's preaching, I love it, but he's actually telling it how it is, hit that like button and make sure you share this as well. Let's get the word out. It's super important that we start thinking about how we design and build differently today. I mean, it can't wait any longer. So, all right, we got some other comments on here. Let's just run through them real quick. Hey, Damien, what's happening? Biggest issue in the industry is pulling and pushing in several directions, trying to resolve at once the damage caused over decades. And it's true, right? I mean, Dan, everything we're talking about, we're still doing it the same way, blah, right? Nobody else does it the same way for 100 years, but for some reason we find in the construction industry that that's brilliant. I don't understand personally, but that's the way it goes. Christy Wells made a nice comment. Good to see you, Christy. Damien, hats off to Daniel and his team, as he says. And using a common platform solves the issues of all fabricators and manufacturers using different programs and details. Great work. So I'm going to assume that's Jason Blenker again as well. So Jason, I appreciate it. Ryan, let me say Geldard, I think is how we say it. The right design decisions are made early with this approach. When the decisions are cheap, much more expensive handling those issues later. Well, that's right. It's all in the pudding up front, right? You got to get the ingredients right before you start baking. And if we can do that, we end up with a much better product on the end. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, it's one of my biggest frustrations. I mean, that you touched upon it earlier. There's a moral and sort of ethical dilemma that we have with regards to attracting young people into the industry, because it's a very dysfunctional industry at the moment. And the weird thing is, I think we've got the biggest opportunity that we've ever had to attract the next generation of talent into this industry, because construction technology is evolving at a rapid pace. There's lots of cross-pollination with things like gaming industries. You know, there's so many people that I talk to that have got sons and daughters that play Minecraft and other building, you know, platforms like that, where they're talking to kids in other countries over the internet, and they're building things together. And it's really frustrating that some of the stuff that we've achieved as an industry, some of the, you know, architectural buildings that have been constructed hundreds of years ago with pens, pencils, tape measures, and all those really basic tools, we've now got access to some of the most powerful technology. And yet we're still fucking it up. And it really does make you question what the hell we are doing wrong, because, you know, we built the London Underground, we've built monasteries and churches, and I agree with Henry in some respects, but hey, we can't just blame the QSs. This is a job that's been created. I mean, I know of a client. I was chatting to a colleague not long ago that was aware of something called Bonus Fridays in one of the tier one main contractors, where, you know, there was a conscious push on a given day to go and clip the supply chain and take money off the supply chain. And I think if that's the type of environment that you're creating, that isn't an environment to thrive. That is an environment to survive. And at the moment, it feels like everybody is just fighting to survive. Profits become a dirty word, and everybody's working on too lower margins with too much risk. And, you know, it's any wonder that anybody even wants to come into this industry. And I think that's, you know, this is going to be a generational change. And I think the young people that come in and embrace the technology will be the ones that do it. But the critical thing is they need all of the grey hair that exists in the industry, and the experience and the good knowledge that we've got. That needs to be passed down, so that we've got this hybrid of knowledge and experience that's built up over a long time, and people that can drive the software and technology and utilize it the way that it should be utilized.
Young people today are more connected than we ever were, right? Their idea of collaborating, whether it's on video games or anything else in school, online school, is so much different than us gray hairs went about doing it, right? And I think that's going to play a big role in how this moves forward with the youth, them coming into the industry, and how they operate. And I think you really are having a groundswell movement of, you know, what the process of that change is. And we're just about at our 45 minutes here. So why don't we just recap real quick, Dan, you know, the 3 ways to modernize construction from your viewpoint, right? Let's just go through it real quick. 1, we had training and education, which is super important. Because how do we bring young people into this industry if they don't have the proper training for our industry to do it the new way, to build it better? Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. And the only way that we're going to achieve that is that the cross-sector of industries and disciplines have got to partner up with universities and colleges in order to develop the curriculums that their industries need. Nobody is going to do this for them. The only way that we're going to get the discipline-specific qualifications and apprenticeships is for the industry to partner with the educators and come up with ways and means of driving that education and developing those curriculums. It's the only way that we're going to do it.
Absolutely. And then there was technology. We have the greatest technology in the world at our fingertips right now. We can put people to the moon or Mars and back without anybody on it autonomously. You're telling me we can't get our buildings right? Talk about the technology, Dan.
Best way I can put it, Dave, is we've got the fire engines, but we're still putting out the fire with buckets and hoses. It's like, we've got so much technology at our fingertips: virtual reality, augmented reality, BIM modeling, and all those good things. And at the moment, they're just not being utilized. We can't even get IFC files from packages like Revit, an Autodesk package like Revit, into a Trimble-based package like Tekla. So you end up remodeling and redetailing things 2, 3, 4 times. So, we've got a massive opportunity now with technology, but everybody's got to understand that technology, and everybody's got to be given an environment to actually develop the skills, because it's the same thing again. If you're trying to bring a new piece of technology or a new piece of software into your business,
right,
if you're signed up to liquidated damages and to, ridiculous clauses that restrict you and leave you open and vulnerable to massive financial penalties, then you're never going to be able to upskill your guys and take those risks that are going to generate the collaboration and innovation the industry needs.
Yeah, for sure. All right, last one, number 3. You talk about standardization, and then we'll get to a couple more comments and we'll wrap up. But go ahead, standardization.
Yeah, it's listen. The offsite we do a lot of offsite work, and we work in the modular industry. And standardized design and stuff is a real area where we can see lots of potential for efficiencies and innovation. There's a lot that can be done with regards to buildings. There's a lot more flexibility to buildings than maybe developers realise when you talk about modular or you talk about offsite. We've heard the point made 1,000 times. Every building and every project that we build in construction is a prototype, and that's got to change. We can't keep reinventing the wheel every time we design a football stadium, an airport, a shopping centre, or a house. We've got to take those learnings. I think people get fixated with the fact that everything's going to look the same. It's not about that. We can make everything look different if you want, but the components, the design methodology, the teams that are producing those things, there's got to become more uniformed and more standardized. And if you're in a situation where you're not even working with the same architect, the same engineer, the same main contractor, because you're not the cheapest price, so you didn't win the job, so for me, standardization and looking at uniform ways of working is absolutely the big future for the industry. So as I see it moving forward, certainly the offsite sector in the UK market is going to play, I think, a big role in terms of bringing construction forward and into the future.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Dan, let's just touch on a few quick things here. We got Scott Saddam in the house. What's happening, Scott? Value equals benefit cost. Measuring true benefit is tricky. A builder who knows how to measure true total cost is extremely rare. The result is that for most value engineering is little more than a cost-cutting exercise. I would agree with that. Hey, look who it is. Jerry McCahey in the house. What's happening, Jerry? Imagine if the same process to build buildings on Earth was applied to the buildings of the International Space Station. Right? That's right, Jerry. Jerry says it all the time. His quote is, the NASA, or I guess SpaceX these days, are the best off-site builders in the world. Oh, maybe the universe, but maybe there's more aliens out there. Who knows, Jerry? We may not be the only ones. All right, Kevin Brocklesby. If I said Brocklesby, I think I'm saying that right. Sorry about that if I messed it up. Dan, give me a bell. Would love to talk to the model you talk about to the next Offsite Alliance skills and competency work stream. So there you go. That's always cool. That's what it's all about. It's about collaborating. It's about people reaching out, Dan. This is why we love our platform so much. And then one last comment from Carol, standardization. Booyah is the pivotal factor. So big booyah to you as well, Carol. Thank you so much for joining us today. Whew. Did we hit on everything, Dan? Did I miss anything?
Yeah, no, listen, we could talk for days about all this stuff, couldn't we, Dave, as we know. So, no, really enjoyed the chat, as always, and look forward to catching up with you in London next month.
Yeah, we're going to be in London the week of June 23rd. We got some special events. We're speaking over there with one of our sponsors, Howick. Yeah, that's right. We're coming over with Howick, and we're going to be speaking at the New Zealand Embassy House in London. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and we plan on staying there all week and live streaming from some manufacturing and probably some buildings that have been done offsite as well. Be sure to join us this Friday, BS Friday. We have Chris Magwood coming back on the show, and guess what? That carbon calculator we talked about so many months ago, he decided to make it free for everybody. You want to know what the carbon footprint of your project is, of your house is? Join us this Friday. You're going to learn more about how you can get your hands on that calculator as well. All right. So with that said, listen, everybody, we appreciate having you on today. We appreciate you joining us. Hit that like and share button one last time if you do not mind. And if you're not subscribed, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And please follow Dan and everything they're doing. And remember, we're going to call out the BS when you see those posts. We'll call it the BS post. Not BS Friday, the BS post. Hey, Dan, don't go anywhere. We'll come right back to you after the outro. Everybody else, we'll see you Friday. Awesome, man. Thanks so much for joining. Bye now.
Thanks, Dave.